If you have the 5th, 6th, 7th, or 8th pick in your fantasy football draft this summer, you have come to the right place because I have done over 150 fantasy football drafts this summer. Anywhere from underdog paid best ball drafts to Yahoo Pro Leagues to the Scott Fish Bowl to mock drafts on ESPN, Yahoo, Sleeper, and everything in between. All right. And what I found to be the single best draft strategy is what I'm going to share for y'all today if you are picking in the middle round of your fantasy football drafts. All right. We've already done part 1 of this series, picks 1 through 4. Tomorrow's video will be the end of the series, picks 9 through 12. So no matter where you are drafting from, we've got a little something for y'all. All right. You'll know the deal. Tuck the shirts in, please. See. All of the ADP that I referenced today is from Sleeper and their full PPR data, all right? You got problems with ESPN, Yahoo, Underdog, everyone in between. I think Sleeper is the perfect middle ground for doing this video. I will link that down below if you want to go check out the ADP for yourself. So, 105 through 108. General rules of thumb. I'm trying to leave the first 3 rounds with 2 wide receivers and 1 running back. However you end up squeezing those positions out is the right way to go. Again, sure, you don't want to enter drafts knowing exactly who you're going to take or exactly what positions you're going to take by round, but I've done so many drafts that I know where the value pockets are in most rounds. Rule number 2 is that I'm okay drafting my first bench wide receiver before my second running back on my team. Doesn't mean that that is always what I'm going for, but I am fine with it, so do not deter yourself from taking good bench players before your starter. And rule of thumb number 3 is just this is not the year to test out late round tight end. You are not going to hit on the guy that you think you are at tight end 17, I promise you. So when we're picking in the middle of the round, the first round, it's just that. It's the first round. We're just trying to avoid doing anything drastic. So we are going to take the best player available, whoever that may be to you at this spot, and we'll figure it out from there. Amon-Ra is the 105. Jamar Chase is the 6. Bijan is the 7. A.J. Brown is the 9. Breece Hall is the 8. Don't ask me why I have them listed backwards right now in our draft guide article, but I do. So just to keep things even, let's say we'll start with a running back this time, okay? And we'll build the team out as we go down this video, and I'll show you the full lineup afterwards. As I said, we want to leave the first 3 rounds with a running back and 2 wide receivers. Given that we just took our first running back, that will anchor our team. So we got Bijan at the 107. In round 2, unfortunately, in the middle of the second round, there's not a ton of value to be had here because the way that the tiers have kind of fallen this year is this run of wide receivers from like the 202, whether that's Marvin Harrison Jr. or Chris Olave, all the way down to like the 210, 211 of the Deebo Samuels, the Nico Collinses, where there's not a huge value gap between any of them, right? And since we took our running backs, even like the Saquons or the Jonathan Taylors, I think you have a little bit of hesitancy just based on what is their role in the passing game because they have mobile quarterbacks, what is their role in the goal line because they have mobile quarterbacks. But because we went running back, we're going to double tap wide receivers in rounds 2 and 3. But if you had gone with a wide receiver early, maybe this is the round that you want to go with the running back because I think Kyron Williams would be available to you. Maybe Jonathan Taylor fell to you, so you can go round 2 there or wait till round 3 and grab a guy like Derrick Henry or Isaiah Pacheco. But for this instance, because we took Bijan in round 1, we will take our wide receiver 1 in round 2, and that is Brandon Ayuk, who currently has an ADP of 209. So we grab him there in the middle-ish, endish of the second round. And back to round 3 because we want to leave round 3 with 2 wide receivers and 1 running back. We have available options like Nico Collins, Mike Evans, Deebo Samuel, Jalen Waddle. And one thing I want to remind you as you're watching these strategy videos, again, like I'm not here to decide which player I like more than other players. I'm not here to argue about like Nico Collins at the 3-4 versus Mike Evans at the 3-5. It's general team building strategy, understanding where the value pockets are throughout the draft. So for all intents and purposes, we're going to grab Ayuk at the 209 and then Mike Evans at the 305. So far we have Bijan as our running back 1, and then we have Ayuk and Evans as our wide receiver 1 and 2. And in round 4, right, I've been talking about how I want our tight end. I want our guy here. I want one of the big 5 at tight end that is either Kelsey, McBride, Laporta, Andrews, or Kincaid. Now, I have McBride as my tight end 1. If you are going with McBride, he typically goes off the board before round 5, And usually you can't get him at the end of round 4. So if you have a middle round pick, you will be able to get him more often than not in round 4. So this is the time I'm going to be able to pounce on that. All right. And listen, you're going to have to read the room a little bit with your draft. There are going to be drafts where McBride might fall to round 5 or round 6 or round 7. By all means, wait on it then, all right? But I know if I'm in a sharp league, if I'm in a league with dudes who have been paying attention to football all offseason and understand that Kyler is now, I won't go into the McBride propaganda here, but I'm gonna dub round 4 the Trey McBride round. So at 407, we will take Trey McBride. Now at this point in the draft, when we're in round 5, the value at wide receiver just so far outweighs what is left at running back. And because there's a decent chance that you went hero RB based on the strategy I presented. Hero RB is having one running back early on, and we did that with Bijan Robinson. We're not in a hurry to fill our running back 2 slot, okay? So like I said, I'm okay grabbing a bunch of wide receivers that you could either have one on the bench ready to fill in for any bye weeks, or if you have like double flexes, if you could start up to like 4 or 5 wide receivers, do it, all right? So we're into round 5, and I will say on top of this, I'm not totally out on the Anthony Richardson sweepstakes here. If you drafted Michael Pittman in the 3rd round or something like that, right? Like you were at the 307, 308, and Michael Pittman was the best wide receiver available, and you went there, I think the Indy stack could be kind of special this year. They're going to be a very fast-paced offense. They're going to run a ton of plays. Pittman just got that extension, obviously. So I don't hate that. Otherwise, continue drafting wide receivers because in round 5, in the middle of the round, you have Pickens has an ADP of 505, Higgins at 507, Amari Cooper at 510, Christian Kirk at 603. Again, these are sleepers, ADPs, so it's not paid leagues for the most part. Some of them are paid leagues, some of them are mock draft leagues, but people that are mock drafting on Sleeper are definitely a little bit more in tune with fantasy football right now than those drafting on probably ESPN or Yahoo. So it's a good middle ground between paid and casual leagues. So I'm trying to keep it as realistic as humanly possible. I know y'all are going to yell and argue with me no matter what kind of fucking ADP I use. But we'll say because Amari Cooper was a 5'10 slot in the ADP, we will take him here in round 5. Now listen, if you're someone that's starting to feel uncomfortable entering round 6 about not having their second running back, David Montgomery seems to be like a really good pick for you in round 6 if you have a middle round pick because he is the 606 right now in ADP. But if you're like me, again, I'm happily continuing to pound the wide receiver pathway here. As we head deeper into the drafts, the value swaps immediately back to running backs. You can get workhorse running backs in round 7, in round 8, when the wide receivers all swapped like those rookies that we want to be great. So I'm going to take one more receiver here in round 6, and you could choose between Terry McLaurin at 608, Jaden Reed 701, Chris Godwin 702. I'll take Chris Godwin just because he's probably the most realistic to get all the way down here. Again, don't worry too much about the player. It's more about the strategy. So through 6 rounds, we have Bijan as our running back 1. We have Ayuk, Evans, Amari Cooper, Chris Godwin. We've got a great mix of upside, of PPR players, of deep threats, of touchdown scorers. So I feel good about that. And I just realized that I took Evans and Godwin, and I might not want to double stack that Bucs offense. So maybe we swap. Maybe we swap Godwin for Jaden Reed, and he is your flex 1 player instead, okay? Whatever the case may be. And then we've got Trey McBride as our starting tight end. So we get to round 7, and this is the point in the draft where the value tilts back in favor of running backs. This is the perfect round to draft the boring, high-floor running back 2 of your preference because you have Najee Harris at the 708, Tony Pollard at the 709, Zamir White at the 712. Like, take your pick of these boring running backs that are going to get 250 touches this year, some with some touchdown equity, some with pass catching equity. Whatever your flavor of RB2 is, the 7th round is the perfect spot to get them. These are typical dead zone backs that used to go in rounds like 4 or 5, and now they're dropping back to the end of the 7th round. So they all have mid or late round 7th ADPs, and you can get them as your RB2 here, and you already have like 4 really solid wide receivers, obviously a high-end tight end in Trey McBride. So we'll just say we'll take Zamir White here, even though I like Zamir White way less than Najee Harris and Tony Pollard. So we are into round 8 and 9, and we are without a starting quarterback through 7, and I think it should remain that way. You know, if you really love Jordan Love, if Kyler Murray drops here, I would probably suggest taking him. But at this point in the draft, most of the time, all the dudes that remain at quarterback are the same tier of dudes that can equally like just satisfy that top of your lineup, right? It's the Jared Goff tier, it's Brock Purdy, it's Tua. Like, all those guys are going to put you up 4,200 passing yards and 25 to 30 touchdowns. So I'm not really losing my mind over which one of those guys I'm going to get, assuming all of the top quarterbacks are off the board already. So in round 8 and 9, we're going to continue to pepper our flex positions here. Some targets like D-Hop is available at the 806, Deontay Johnson at the 809, Jackson Smith and Jigba at the 901, Jalen Warren at the 903, Christian Watson at the 905, Brian Robinson Jr. at the 1003, Tajay Spears at the 1002, Zeke at the 1010. So, like, those are guys that we're mixing and matching depending on what your preferences, what your league settings are, what your starting lineup settings are, things like that. So we'll grab D-Hop at the 806 and we'll grab Brian Robinson, who is in the 1003. So we'll try to even out the ADPs a little bit. So once we hit round 10, that's probably where I'm going to start to game plan for which quarterback I'm actually going to take. So if we took Amon-Ra St. Brown with our first round pick, I'm probably going to target Jared Goff. If you drafted Brandon Ayuk or Deebo Samuel or even George Kittle, let's probably lean towards Brock Purdy. All right, you get the gist. We're trying to stack our quarterback. And then once you get to round 10 plus, you're just going to start ripping shots on our favorite sleepers. All right. And all of our favorite sleepers are in our draft guide right now, which is live at this very moment on BDGE.co. It has our rankings for super flex leagues, for one quarterbacks leagues, PPR, half PPR, standard. It's got all of our must draft players, our entire all fade list, our favorite sleepers, as I already fucking yapped about 6 times. It's got our draft strategy articles just like this for each draft position, as well as for super flex leagues as well. We got a whole lot of shit in the draft guide this year. It is the best one that we have made so far. So head over to bdge.co to cop it, or the cheapest way, it is full price on the website, but get it at a very heavily discounted price by signing up on Underdog. Go download the Underdog Fantasy app. Use promo code BDGE when you deposit $10 on there, and you will get the draft guide access emailed to you for free. You will get a free square to bet on the Underdog app for week 1, and you'll get some deposit bonuses, deposit match on the platform when you use our promo code. So the full price for the draft guide is about 3 times as much as doing it through Underdog Fantasy. It is the best. It is the best offer in the industry. All right. So underdogfantasy.com. Now, just to wrap this up, as I've said before, as I said in the 101 to 104 video, and I will say again in the 109 to 112 video, as it relates to defenses and kickers, we are reserving those 2 positions for our last 2 rounds of any fantasy football draft. All right. It's defense, second to last round, kicker, last round. For defenses, streaming, my rule of thumb is we are looking for teams that are projected to win their game. Straight up, I want to play a defense that is supposed to win their game. Tiebreaker number 2 is that they're playing at home, and then the bigger the spread, the better they are. So some good realistic options outside of the Baltimores and the San Franciscos for week 1. We have Buffalo -6.5 versus Arizona. We have Cincy -9.5 versus New England. We've got the Saints -4.5 versus Carolina. Seattle -5 versus Denver. Tampa Bay -3.5 versus Washington. All those teams are at home. All right. So Buffalo, Cincinnati, Saints, Seattle, Tampa Bay, all favorites by more than 3 points, all at home. And if your draft is taking place anytime before September, I honestly wouldn't even bother drafting a defense or a kicker. Just draft a handcuff running back and see if like one of the starters gets hurt throughout the preseason. Then you got yourself an RB1. So this is the way the potential lineup ended up coming out for this video based on the picks that we made throughout. We have Brock Purdy as our starting quarterback. We've got Ayuk, Evans, and Amari Cooper as our wide receivers. Bijan and Zamir White as our running backs. Trey McBride as our tight end. Chris Godwin, DeAndre Hopkins, and Brian Robinson at the bottom of the lineup. So a very well-rounded roster. A little bit boring, if you ask me, to be honest with you, but a few tweaks, a few switches here and there throughout, taking some other players with maybe a little bit more upside. Maybe we go with A.J. Brown in round 1 and then Jonathan Taylor in round 2, and we like our lineup a little bit more. But overall, I hope the strategy part of this video helped you draft a good team. And in order for you to draft the lineup you like the most, look no further than our draft guide. Again, the cheapest way to get it, underdogfantasy.com. Download the Underdog Fantasy app. The link will be right in the notes below. Use code BDGE when you deposit $10 or more and get all that good shit for free. All right? I'll see you in the 109 to 112 video tomorrow. I love you.